Hi, everybody. This is Erica from In the Company of Cards. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back and happy Sunday. As you know, on Sundays, I do a thing called Sunday Conversations. Sometimes it's just you and me, but most of the time, I like to bring you a friend who I think is someone that you would enjoy meeting. And so today, I have a friend, a guest and it's Dr. Anne Charlotte Valentine. And she's a naturopathic physician, spiritual educator, and public speaker. Lives in Arizona, and you founded the Center for Integrative Medicine, I know, and the Spiritual Center, Divine Spiritual Essence. And let me just say, how do I know her? So I came to her, for guidance, for advice, and we hit it off right away, and feel like we probably had known each other in another life. Um, and I just thought, you'd be a wonderful guest to bring on. So, hi, Dr. Lottie, and thank you for agreeing to be on the show with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
Really exciting. So you'll detect a teeny tiny accent, really small. And this is where are you from? You want to tell everybody where you're from?
I grew up in Scandinavia, so that is in Northern Europe, in
Mhm.
Sweden. So think, reindeer, polar bears, right
Ah.
underneath the North Pole. So that's where I grew up, and I moved to the United States when I was 21, which was now many, many, many years ago.
Right. So I actually heard you on a broadcast speaking Swedish, and I thought, oh, what a pretty language, so sing-songy and up and down, and then I thought, and your English is well, I mean, I sound like an idiot. You've been here forever, but your English is almost unaccented, which is interesting. So I mean, for those of us, we Americans, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
We need to speak more than one language. I'm just saying, everybody needs to speak more than one language. It gives you a whole different perspective on life, I think, you know?
It really does. I mean, it's kind of funny because when you speak another language, the words that you learn, right, pertains to that culture, and
Mhm.
it teaches you something about the other cultures. It's
Right,
fascinating.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So one of the reasons that I thought you'd be great to have on is that you're a naturopath and that's a certain kind of physician. Can you explain to the audience what it means to be a naturopathic doctor?
hmm So, a naturopathic doctor is somebody who typically went to medical school. There is licensing of naturopathic doctors in, I think, about half of the states in the United States. So, they're going through what the chiropractors once went through. I'm sure acupuncturists, it's becoming more mainstream. But to see a naturopathic doctor, you have to make sure that you're actually seeing somebody that went to medical school and not somebody who can call themselves doctor because they completed some online study program. So you have to actually make sure that somebody's licensed in that state, and you can look that up online. But a naturopathic physician is somebody who blends traditional Western medicine and also Chinese medicine, acupuncture, homeopathy, and botanical medicine. And I was attracted to that because the tool bag is so much bigger because not everybody does well with pharmaceuticals and not everybody does well with botanical medicine or acupuncture. But when you're able to prescribe both, you can really tailor the medicine to each individual, what works for them.
Mhm.
So it's a really fascinating, it's a more of a holistic approach to medicine where, one glove doesn't fit everybody and you can develop a program that fits for that person.
Right. And I've always thought Western medicine as a rule is so, well, I'm going to say, this is just me. There's a primitiveness to it. I've always thought, like um, cut, operate, remove, um, I, and also until recently, I think a lack of respect for other cultures and how they do medicine. So you mentioned Chinese medicine. I mean, we have to think for a minute. Chinese people have been alive for how long? Without
Yep.
without benefit of Western medicine, they must know something, correct? So I'm hoping, I do think that there is. there's a broadening of people's perspective in this area, which is good. I'm just curious about, I mean, not to be political, but to be political. What do you think about this current um, philosophy in the administration, we'll call it, about health? Because I know that I would assume that naturopaths and acupuncturists and homeopaths and stuff would like the direction that the administration is going in. What do you think?
I mean, I think that healthcare is something that should be available for all people,
Right.
number one. Um, and I think that we should have more choices of the healthcare that we would like to seek out. Because the way we have set up the system now is dependent on the insurance that you have, who you can see. Well, you want to see a doctor that's part of a different hospital because they're specialized in what you need,
Mhm.
but you're not allowed to because your insurance is only contracted with this other hospital.
Right.
And it makes it so much red tape for people, and people can't access the care that they need. But also, there's just a lot of hoops for people to jump through to even get care today. And it's just something, I mean, healthcare is something that should be available to everyone. I grew up with that in Sweden. Everybody has healthcare. In Sweden, all the children have free dental care all the way up through, I think, ninth grade.
Mhm.
There is a doctor and nurse at the school. They do health checks every year on the kids. All the meals are free. There's hot lunches that are cooked, salad bars, lots of different options of food. And that is all part of the system. That is to be expected that children should be fed and they should have access to healthcare. And then the same thing happens, right? As they become an adult, you're not dependent on having a job in order to have healthcare.
Mhm.
Everybody has access to healthcare.
Right.
So it creates for a whole different society. But I'm going to say people are happier, people have access to that.
Well, America, which claims to be exceptional, meaning that in a good way, is definitely exceptional. I don't know if it's in a good way, because as you and I both know, money is the god, and so everything is about money. But anyway, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
thing. Now, another thing that you do that I think is really interesting is that you're a medium. You've trained as a medium. And I know my audience will be really interested in that. I've told you that I do mediumship through the cards, but you are trained by tell us about Arthur Finley and what that's all about and what you learned there. I
Mhm.
think they'd be fascinated.
Um, yeah, so I know that I was a born medium since I was a child, and I could see auras and things as a child, but then suppressed that growing up and wanted to blend in. And then I had my two near-death experiences, and all these gifts were I'm going to say reactivated because they were already there. So as soon as I graduated from med school, and I started med school when I was 54, and so I graduated when I was 58, and
And
I
hold on, hold on,
immediately,
hold on. And you have a book,
yeah.
Med School After Menopause, you all. So I will put the link to that in the show notes. But yes, go ahead.
hmm yeah, and the book is really about the transformation, about the fact that we can all change our lives, even if we've gone through menopause, like I had. There is nothing that stops you, which is why I chose that title,
Mhm.
to move on with your life and become something different and completely transform everything. So
I
we can
get
go back and talk
Well, yeah,
about that.
well, no, let's talk about that, and then let's go back to the Arthur family because
Okay.
I completely relate to that. I mean, I
Mhm.
was a high school teacher for 30 years. I mean, that's what I did. And then I was a college consultant the whole time. And now here I am doing this work because I followed my intuition. I followed what I was led to do. And, there's no reason that a person cannot change directions, in fact, over and over and over again until we're not in the flesh anymore. So I think it's a very important lesson and message for people to hear that just because you're doing a certain thing and just because you've done that certain thing for X amount of time, that shouldn't be the reason that you stay doing that thing if you feel called to something else.
right? I mean, I think it's hard for people, it's hard to change path because people say, well, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do this? Right? And we sort of create the obstacles too. We're afraid of taking that leap, but everything is possible. That's what I'm going to say. If you really want to change your life, you can change your life. There's nothing that's stopping you except for your own mind.
For the mind. What is the,
Hmm.
let's say, I think it's Milton or uh well, Shakespeare and Milton together, but there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And the other one is the mind can make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell. And so this is sort of this bridge, this that's it feels like a bridge between what we started to talk about and what I'd like you to talk about next, which is um, there's the reality of medical school and all of the work and all of that entails. But there was this goal that you had in mind.
Hmm.
And I always say everything that we see was first a thought, every single thing. Maybe a thought in the mind of God, but a thought. And that's that's how, like we all agree that this is a solid object. And it's a solid object because we all agree that it's a solid object.
Yes,
If we
true.
didn't all agree,
Yeah.
would it still be a solid object? I don't know. Because it's just, atoms or whatever,
Hmm.
molecules moving really, really, really fast to the point where we perceive it as a solid object. So the mind is way more magical and complex than most of us realize. And this is true for everybody's mind. And that's why I'm so interested in your metaphysical journey. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So after my near-death experiences, and I left my body and saw things, and things really changed my life. And then I graduated from med school. And while I was in med school and I was meditating, I would see my patients before I was assigned the patient. So this whole mediumship started while I was in med school and really tuning in and knowing things about people that hadn't even met yet. So then I graduated from med school and I met this woman and she said, I'm a medium. And we had just met taking a course together. And I said, what do you mean you're a medium? You have somebody here that wants to communicate. And she says, yes, somebody wants to give you a message. So I said, okay, I'm open. And I had never experienced this before. So she said, it was very clear it was my mom. And she said, she kept saying, you have to go to Arthur Findlay College. And I knew what that was. I had just learned about Arthur Findlay College a year earlier. And she said, over and over again, she kept saying, you have to go there. And I said, I just graduated from med school. I just took my boards. I don't even have my license yet. How am I supposed to? I'm going into a residency. I don't know if I can get any time off.
Because it's in
And
England, right? I mean,
yes, and then exactly, and then 6 months later, there I was in England, and Arthur Findlay College is a very, very renowned college of learning how to study mediumship and psychic. So people come to Arthur Findlay College from all over the world. So if anybody's ever, if you ever go there, you will be working, the class will probably be 50 to 100 people, depending on what week you go. And then you're divided into smaller groups of 10 to 15 people. And the classes start at 9 in the morning and they end at 9 o'clock at night. So it's a very intense week. And you are working nonstop. You get breaks obviously for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but you go until 9 o'clock at night. So it's a very intense training program. So I've been there several times to develop that mediumship, but I never anticipated that I was going to actually be working with it. I thought it was more for my own development at that point. But then, of course, everything changes because you can't always see exactly what the future is. And so had my clinic. I ended up closing my clinic, my medical clinic, and now I only work with people on Zoom as a medical medium because I would know things. It started when I was in residency too. People would walk through my door, a new patient, and the spirit world would tell me, this is what's wrong with this person. And I would say, what do you mean this is what's wrong? And sure enough, that would be the problem. And I would say, okay, well, why don't we do an x-ray or why don't we do this other test because I'm listening. The spirit world keeps saying they have this problem, right? But normally you wouldn't necessarily request those kinds of images or those kinds of labs for the reason the person actually came to see a doctor. So it's really interesting. So that brought me into the medical medium. And so now I work with people all over the world. And the same thing still happens. Sometimes people show up on my screen and I already know what it is. And sometimes we talk for a little bit and they'll talk about, I have this issue and that issue. And then I have, I don't digest well and I have so many allergies. And I'm like, that's not it. This is the problem. This is what I'm hearing. And I've even had people I had one woman once that had the really crazy things that when you go through medical school, they'll say, you will never, ever have a patient with this. But, we're just going to let you know. So keep it in the back of your mind.
Right.
And this person, and I kept saying, like, I keep hearing Ehlers-Danlos,
Oh,
vascular
yeah.
Ehlers-Danlos.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's
I
not
know
something
someone
that's,
who has that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not common. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what the symptoms are for this because it's not something we learn. They just kind of mention it in medical school and say, send them on to the experts. And so I said, let's look up what the symptoms are, and I'm going to read off the list, and you tell me if you had any of these because I keep hearing this.
So, like
And
joint hypermobility, isn't that one of the symptoms?
yeah, joint hypermobility is one, Ehlers-Danlos.
Yeah.
So the
Dry eyes.
vascular.
Hmm.
The vascular component is, the vascular system, the veins and the arteries have issues. So I read off a list of these different symptoms, and one was aortic dissection. So basically, your aorta is blowing up.
Oh,
So, right? So it's not something you are going to see. And she looks at me, she goes, I had that.
wow.
Yeah. And then she said, 20 years ago, this doctor told me that someday, that we don't know enough about why this happened or these diseases yet, but someday somebody's going to tell you what you have, and it's some kind of a vascular disease, but we don't have the name for it yet. And then she looks at me and she goes, and I just learned that today.
Where's Donos? Yeah.
Yeah, and then but then, I knew what test to order. And I said, this is the test. Tell your doctor that you want to order this test. I mean, so it's, how divinely guided we all are. The fact that she decided, saw me on a podcast and decided, I don't know, this woman has some information I need,
Yeah.
right? Which is, we feel attracted to people for a reason. And I'm going to tell people, when you have an attraction to someone, it could be a doctor, a dentist, a hair cutter, a new friend, whatever that is, listen to that. There's something about that. You're being guided. There's a reason why that attraction comes up. And it's absolutely fascinating. So I work a lot as a medical medium. I also work as an evidential medium, connecting with the spirit world.
Well, let's
I,
get back to the medical
Mhm.
meeting. So,
yeah.
because I came to you in that capacity, or
Mhm.
you in that capacity, and I have a doctor that I go to, and that doctor knows what I do. I gave her a copy of my book and some my cards, and her eyes got all wide. She's very good at what she does, but I get the impression that doctors who are trained in standard Western medicine are taught that this other stuff is just, I mean, wacky and out there and not to be believed. I've always said or thought that physics and metaphysics are not only two sides of the same coin, they are the same exact thing, in fact.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How have you been received by people in um, I don't even know what you call it, the
The
standard medical
the
world?
regular medical community.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
am
good.
sure that I have classmates that look at me and thinking, oh my God, that woman, she's crazy. I knew she was crazy. And then there's the other side of the coin where a lot of people are spiritual and they do see that and they do have that belief system themselves. So I'm going to say it's probably split down the middle because there are a lot of physicians that keep the mask on and says, oh, well, that's interesting, right? And they don't want to let you in on the fact that they are quite spiritual or that they do
Yes.
receive messages, right? Because they know that their colleagues will look at them and say, oh, she's a quack or he's a quack, right? And so I think there's so much fear about, and I had a tremendous fear in the beginning of why am I getting into this? I shouldn't be getting into this. And, I went to medical school and I need to just, do that. But the spirit world had other plans. So here I am, right? But that is also my message to the people is that we need to tune into that. We need to be more open with the patients as well and listening to the patients because there are many times when physicians have an intuitive message. My dad was a physician,
Mhm.
and he was very scientific. He did not believe in my near-death experience. He said, no, no, no. He just laughed and he said, that this just can't happen. It just can't happen. He was such a scientist, and my mom would be on the other side of the table saying, yes, but, honey, listen to her, listen to her. And he's like, no, no, that's got to be some kind of hallucination. It just can't happen. Right. And so he came from that very scientific point of view. But then, of course, when I went to Arthur Findlay College, and I had a reading with one of my teachers. She says, "Oh, your dad is here." And he says, he's popping in and he says, "You proved me wrong."
Ah,
I laughed so hard. And I said, I know exactly what he means because now he's on the other side. But I'm going to say, I came from that very scientific point of view, which is also probably why I suppressed, talking about seeing auras or seeing spirits in a flame of a candle. Because when I told my friends or my siblings, and can you see the energy field around the flowers on the table? And they would stare and then they would say, what are you talking about?
yeah.
Right. And so then you learn to suppress that because other people aren't experiencing the same thing. So I suppressed it all. And then it wasn't until I had my near death experiences that it got reactivated. There was no choice now. This is the path you're going down.
It's interesting. I'm thinking about our eyes and how we believe what we see with our eyes. And I think that the work that you do and the work that I do gives people permission to have their eyes see in a more clear way, right? I don't even know how to describe it, but I will say that in my experience with doctors who are traditionally trained, when they find out what I do, sometimes I get them to, I show them what I do. I'll say, well, would you like me to read for you? And they're kind of looking around because in case, it's like you said, they don't want to be caught doing it. And their eyes, what happens to their eyes is very interesting to me. Their eyes widen, their mouths open, and I think they're so trained to believe that everything has a rational reason. Whether they know what it is or not, it's got to be like your father. There's got to be a rational reason for this. But when you show them the span of what's possible with rationality, that it's much broader than they think, in my experience, they're delighted. They're shocked and they're delighted. I have a lot of clients who are physicians or
Mhm.
and psychiatrists and therapists and all of that,
Mhm.
but I don't think that they, at cocktail parties, for example, talk about, oh, I saw this woman and she,
Maybe to their best friend that they can really trust.
yeah,
But, they're not going to put themselves out there because the stakes are too high. You don't want to be known in the field as this wacky doctor who believes that there's truth to card reading or truth to mediumship readings, right? Because it makes them, it's such a scientific field, it's not, we haven't gotten that far to incorporate that into intuition.
no, we haven't. And I will say too, there is a lot of uh, charlatanry out there as
Hmm.
well, right? People who claim to be able to do
Yeah.
things, and there are clients who are needful and
Yeah.
anxious and desperate and
Hmm.
take any port in any
Yeah.
storm. And this field that we're in can easily lend itself to those kinds of charlatans.
Yeah.
Have you experienced
Absolutely.
that? Have you met people like that?
Yes. And I mean, the thing that irritates me the most is when people are, like when you're at a conference or something and you hear somebody doing like a medical intuitive reading and you're just kind of hanging in the background and see, oh, I wonder how that person works. And then listening to the person saying, oh, you have, there's a blockage in your liver. All you need to do is a liver cleanse. I'm like, who doesn't need a liver cleanse? Everybody needs a liver cleanse, right? So it's kind of like they default to that. Um, so I think there is a lot of people when they don't know, I'm sure they sometimes get information about the person, but if they don't get anything, they panic and then they say, oh, you need a liver cleanse because everybody needs a, liver cleanse tea or carrot juice or something, right? But I think that people aren't honest about it,
Right.
so it's definitely there's room to be that person or to pretend that you know more than you do.
The other thing I think is that people want things quick, fast, and in a
Mhm.
hurry. So, for example, as you know, I read cards, and people ask me periodically, I hate my job, and I'm miserable, and I want to do what you do for a living, not realizing that much as you went to medical
Mhm.
school, which was quite the
Yeah,
grind, obviously, that it took me, I think I must have read for people free of charge
yeah,
to help them and to learn
hmm, yeah,
for a good decade
yes,
before I became
yeah,
who I am now.
yeah. I mean, exactly. It's 30 years, right, of me practicing. So when you think about it, it's not something that happens overnight.
Right,
You're right. It takes time to develop these skills, and it's not like you're just, one day tune in and you're getting all this information.
right.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is, and it's like a
Mhm.
muscle that you need to work
Yeah.
in order for it to develop and to grow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
It's
would
not
you
something you learn over weekend workshop.
No, no, but people think it is, and then they'll get
Yeah.
a certificate
Yes.
that proclaims them to be this
Yeah.
professional.
Hmm.
Mm, it's unfortunate because on the one hand, on the other hand, I have a theory that being tapped into um, spirit, we'll call it,
Hmm. Hmm.
is everyone's birthright by just by definition of having been
Hmm.
born into the world. That everybody has the right to connect, and
Hmm.
also, I would say, the capacity to connect.
Hmm.
And when we talk about, what you see with your eyes, I think that's a,
Hmm.
a broader vision. If you say to yourself, wait, oh, I have a right to do this. I don't need an intermediary to do
Hmm.
it for me. I can. That's why when I read cards, when I'm doing my political readings, but also when I'm reading for clients, I like to show them the cards on the table and show them the story and how I arrived at
Hmm.
what I arrived at. Because then they realize, and I say, I have like two, in a spread that I do, I have two lines that is information that they know already. And so I used to have people say, well, why are you telling me that? I already knew that. And I'm like, yes, you did. But
Yeah.
did I? That's the point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I want them to understand that they are in partnership with me. And I feel
Hmm.
like your patients are in partnership with you. And I think it's a
Hmm.
very different mindset than traditional therapy or traditional
Hmm.
medicine would have us believe that it's a partnership. And without the buy-in from both
Hmm.
people, the work can only be sort of half done.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's a partnership.
Yeah. It's a
Hmm.
partnership between us and whoever
Hmm.
is in front of us
Hmm.
and spirit as well. Their
Yeah.
higher self, our higher self, and
Hmm.
then the great I am,
Yeah.
and that we all you just have to find your métier, right? Find your route into it,
Hmm.
right? For you, it's medicine, which is
Hmm.
just so interesting.
Hmm.
For me, it's divination with cards.
Yeah.
For someone else, it'll be runes or cooking. I mean, there's
Hmm.
everything. Magic is attached to everything, I feel like, if we
Hmm.
just allow it. And I love the way you weave between worlds. Do you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
physical and the metaphysical, because I think it's just such a good model for
Mhm.
what's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly. And I think we all have our own path,
Hmm.
right? It's just a matter of figuring out what is the path, what is the right path for me. And if you've been on a path for 40 years, right? Well, that path might end now, and now you're going on a new path, right? Which means that it's never too late to change your life or to do something new.
Well, also, I think that those 40 years or however many years you spent,
Hmm.
they're not for nothing.
Yes.
Not for nothing. For example, I went
Hmm.
to divinity school. Thought I was going to become an Episcopal priest. Thank God they didn't want me. Thank God. But I will say that I learned a certain skill set
Hmm.
that helped me as a teacher and that helps me with my sitters, my clients, right?
Hmm.
Um, so nothing is for nothing. You didn't have those 40 years for no reason,
Hmm.
you know?
Exactly. It all has meaning.
Mhm.
Even though when we look back, while we're doing something and we might have a job we don't like, but later on, you can look back and say, oh, that did serve a purpose. I did learn all those skills in that, which then brought me to this new place,
Yeah,
right? But sometimes we don't realize it because we're going through something we don't like. It
right.
could be, an illness, it could be a job we don't like, but there is a reason for everything that we experience in the end.
I agree. I
Hmm.
think a lot of it is about paying attention. I think our lives are very busy, they're very complicated, they involve other people and all of that. But I think if we pay attention, signs are all around us, all around us. I had a bird. Well, I didn't have a bird. There was a bird that when I was thinking of moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and completely changing my life in every way, uh, there was a period of time when I had to sort of dismantle my house. I know you've done that before, unpacking, throwing out, and in my case, it was 30 years worth of, my husband's stuff, a stepdaughter's stuff, my daughter's stuff, and just that I had to deal with, and it was really kind of overwhelming. But for a week, a robin came and banged on my window incessantly. It had never happened before. Bang, bang, at the same time every day. The same time. At first, I thought, I don't know, maybe I don't even know what I thought, but this had, and one day I said to the bird while it was banging, I even blocked the window. I had a curtain there, but I even put something else up, thinking, what do you, I didn't matter. Bang, 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 bang. And I said, you know what? I think you are the grandmothers and you are the spirit of everyone who's passed, who's loved me and known me, saying to me, Erica, do this, make this move, change this life for a new life. And I said to the bird, I hear you loud and clear. I get it. I appreciate it. And I'm doing it. And the bird never came back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Some
going to say often, right? The birds are often a messenger from the spirit
Yes,
world.
yes.
Hmm.
And some people would say, "Oh, that's just it was coincidence." But no,
No.
there are no such thing. I think the
Hmm.
first thing to tell yourself if you want to follow this
Hmm.
kind of path that
Hmm.
you and I are on is to say that. It's the easiest, simplest thing. Just to say that I take on face value that there is no such thing as
Hmm.
coincidence. If you think that way, if you tell yourself that as a mantra, you've walked 10 steps down this
Hmm.
road, to where you and I are. Just with that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Mm,
Yeah, there are no coincidences. I
no.
think it's no.
And you might say, well, you are wrestling meaning
Hmm.
out of something that has no meaning. Well, can I just say, isn't that the beauty of being a human being?
Right.
That
In
we
the
have
end, yes.
that capacity.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl's book,
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning. Um, when there is no rational sense, we
Hmm.
as human beings make meaning, but
Hmm.
the universe helps us with all of the signs that we're given,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
What is your best advice for people who are stuck in a life feeling hopeless, uh, purposeless, directionless, and are listening and wanting to believe that there's more, but don't know how to get there?
I'm going to say create stillness in your life. So whether that is, sitting down and meditating, some people will say, I can't turn off my brain. And I tell people, you are never going to turn off your brain. Your brain keeps you alive because
So thank God.
if there's a fire in the kitchen, you definitely want to know,
Yeah.
right? So you're never going to be able to turn off your brain. But when you're thinking about the grocery list 14 times, just say, okay, I know grocery list, go right over there. And that's just we're human, and your brain is always turned on. But I'm going to say try and create that stillness either through meditation or just taking a walk by yourself, going to a park. I mean, if you want to go to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee or tea and just sit down somewhere and watch the people walk by.
Mhm.
But it's just creating some stillness and peace within you because we're so busy in today's world. I mean, it's just we're constantly on overload, right? We got the internet and our cell phones and people and work and obligations and is in order to tune into who we truly are, we need to come back to nature, come back to our core and really sit down with ourselves and say, what is it that I don't like about my current life, right? And how can I change that? And instead of saying, I can't change it, I have to pay the bills or I have kids at home or whatever your obligations are, make a plan and say, okay, a year from now or 2 years from now, I want to be doing something different. I want to be over here. And then start making plans and taking those small steps, right? And
Well, yeah.
eventually you'll get there. I didn't just go to medical school. I took prerequisite classes for years. And there was even not even a guarantee I was going to be accepted because I was older, right? I was 54 when I got accepted to medical school. So, taking all those, biology, I had to start with advanced placement high school biology because I didn't have anything since like ninth grade because I was a science and language major.
Mhm.
So I had to do everything from the beginning, and then chemistry one, chemistry two, organic chemistry one, organic chemistry two, and then physics and all the math classes I didn't have, right? And to even get to the point where I could apply. So there was no guarantee, me slaving through taking all those classes, but I just kept my focus on this is where I'm going to do. This is where if I don't get into the schools I'm applying for, I'll apply to the other schools. And if that doesn't work, I'll wait a year and apply again. But, just don't give up.
You know
Just
what? Let me
keep
tell
that
you what
focus.
happened to me
Hmm.
when I was in high school. Um, well, I went to a very fancy private girls' high school in New York that I desegregated when I was quite small. It was a school that went from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I started it in third grade. And it was not an easy thing because uh, you know, the girls were okay, but the adults, a lot of them would just as soon that they not have desegregated and made it very clear. And a lot of the parents also made it clear. But I was very smart, and my teachers were mostly European women of a certain age, right? So they had like during the war years or after the war years, they had left wherever they were and come to the United States. And a lot of them were spinsters their whole lives. That was the old term, unmarried women
Hmm.
who had made a way out of, no way. And they were from France, Russia, Germany, and England. And there were American teachers too that were not the nicest to
Hmm.
me, but the Europeans were. Now, is it because I was black and they were trying to be nice to this black girl?
Hmm.
No. What it was they saw that I was smart and they had expectations and they were not interested in any excuses that I might give for why I couldn't do this or didn't do that or hadn't completed what, blah, blah, blah. They didn't want to hear about that. What they told me was that my mind could take me anywhere, anywhere I wanted to go. And I believed that. So I get to, my senior year, I'm 16, and I applied to one college. Now, why did I only apply to one college? Because I didn't come from a wealthy family. And that school was not telling anybody about fee waivers, which I could have gotten a fee waiver, but I didn't know. So I applied to the one school that I wanted to go to, Harvard. And I was sure that I would get in. I'd been interviewed. They loved me. I had the scores, I had the grades, I had all, okay, the leadership stuff, I had all of that. And I didn't get in. And my mother was so mad, she threw me out of the house. I said, could I have a suitcase? She goes, here. And she hands me a paper bag. And I thought, okay, whatever I don't put in this paper bag, I'll never see again because she'll get rid of everything, which she did. And I had my paper bag and my book bag. And now I'm in the street. And and I thought, I, I don't know. I don't know whether to go left or go right. To the left was a river, and I couldn't swim. So I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. But the right was everything else. All of life was on the right. And my mother had been very abusive. There was a lot about her that I loved. She was beautiful and she was very clever verbally and very colorful and creative, but mentally ill. But I remember saying to myself when I was standing in the street, I don't know where I'm going, but here's what I know. Wherever I'm going to is going to be better than where I'm coming from. And I went to the right, and that was it. And then I reapplied. This is where I'm getting to. I reapplied to Harvard. And then I had to have, an interview. And I said, so they asked me all these questions about what had I done with the year off. And I said, well, I also learned that the reason that they had done that I hadn't gotten in is that my school had told them, don't admit her. Now, why would they do that? Because there was another girl applying also to Harvard whose father was some big, big
Mhm.
shot. Now, Harvard would have taken both of us, but the school didn't know that. So they said we wanted to teach you a lesson. We had never had someone in this school as powerful as you, and we wanted to teach you. I said, you wanted to teach me a lesson. You did. I learned what it's like to be homeless, hopeless, hungry. I learned all of that, and I learned that I could survive. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to learn what Harvard has to teach me. So what can I do to convince you not to blackball me like you did the first time? Well, by this time, the headmistress and the guidance counselor were in tears, apologized, and wrote me a glowing recommendation, and I got in. Because, like you, I had that vision. I knew that I was supposed to be there. And
Yeah.
so I walked towards it, and nothing and no one could get in my way. This is the power of the mind,
Mhm.
just like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And the stories that we tell ourselves. What's that guy's name? He was a Nazi, so but every
Yeah.
even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? Henry Ford.
Mhm.
Henry Ford said, whether you tell yourself you can or you tell yourself you can't, you're right.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great quote,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I don't think we realize the power that we hold between our ears.
Yeah.
And you're just such a great example of
Mhm.
that, that just you can will things into existence. But again, not quick, fast, and in a hurry either.
Right. You're not going to will it by sitting on your couch.
No.
You definitely have to, put one foot in front of the other. But as soon as you start doing something, and I tell people it doesn't matter what it is. If you're thinking of going back to school, I said, I tell people, I don't care what you take a basket weaving class. Like, just take something because it's going to get your foot in the door. It's going to get you back on the campus. And it doesn't matter what it is. Take beginning guitar lessons. It doesn't matter. Just take something. And then now you're there. You know your way around. Now it's not so hard to take, okay, I'm going to take, this English class that I don't have yet or this math class. But you just build on that. And it doesn't have to be you're diving in with a full schedule. No, you might have to work. I was working too. I was working
Right.
and going to school, and I still had kids at home. You just have to find, carve out that little tiny piece of extra time and start your journey in that new direction. But the thing is, once you open the door, more doors open up,
Well,
right?
that's what I was going to say is that the universe is language, of course, since it's
Mm-hmm.
vibrational. You can't
Yes.
just say, "Oh, I wish I could." Whatever. I mean, okay, that's good, but then the universe wants to know, well, what are you doing towards that end? And what did the Muslims say? If you take one step towards Allah, Allah will take two steps towards you. And that's true.
Yeah.
You'll find, well, what is it? Carl Sandburg, I think, the poet said, or Robert Frost,
Mm-hmm.
way leads on to way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that you're right, that
Yeah.
doors will open if you
Mm-hmm.
show yourself willing to do your part.
Yep. Absolutely. It's not like you're going to sit. I can't sit on the couch and manifest becoming a doctor. I do have to put the work in and go through jump through the hoops. But it's the same thing for anything.
Anything. That's
Anything that you want to succeed at or do or change. Just take one small baby step in that direction and then things will start changing.
right. I mean, I know you know all about meditation, but I've had people too say to me, "Oh, I can't meditate because my mind's all over the place."
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "Well, that's kind of the whole point, right? Because as you say,
Mm-hmm.
you're
Mm-hmm.
human. That's what your mind's going to do.
Yeah.
But if you're meditating and then a thought crosses your mind, like, oh, what
Mm-hmm.
am I going to make for dinner? All you have to do is say, oh, look at that. My mind did that. You acknowledge it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then let it go. And the more you acknowledge and let go and acknowledge and let go,
Yeah.
you'll find that the time in between those extraneous thoughts
Mm-hmm.
expands, right? And then you're
Yeah.
able to create what you're talking about, which is that
Mm-hmm.
that internal silence. Because I think culture, at least here in this country, um, encourages us to keep our minds busy and our
Mm-hmm.
bodies active.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we stop and think, ooh, we might stop and think. And then
Mm-hmm.
what? We can't have you do that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, people that think too much is kind of a threat to society in some ways, right? We go to school where I mean, school was implemented a long time ago because we were training people to become good soldiers, right? And that's why they started school. And so people were taught to sit still, follow direction. Everybody does the same thing at the exact same time, right? But we're still using the same old model today, and I'm waiting for it to change
No, you
because,
know what? I think it absolutely will change. I think it
hmm
started with COVID. And I think that it absolutely will. I mean, not just soldiers, but workers. We want, the
yep,
culture wanted factory workers, right?
yep,
So you listen for a bell, and that tells you
hmm
when you can go to the bathroom and when you can
yep,
eat, and that you have to line up
yep,
and be quiet in the line. And I
hmm
mean, it's this very regimented with no room in your minds to just sit and think. And I
hmm
think that part of this Pluto and Aquarius, and I don't know anything about astrology except that Pluto and Aquarius is a shift in everything. That everything is gonna, blow up so
yeah,
that we can recreate, well, not recreate, create something better
hmm
that has never existed before. And I think that the way we do all kinds of things is going to
hmm
change. The way we do banking, the way we do school,
yeah,
the way we work,
yeah,
all of it is, I mean, like you have this millennials and the Generation Z, they're not going to
hmm
anybody's office,
yeah,
punching in and punching out. And
yeah,
for them, the idea of having a 30-year career like I had is
hmm
anathema to them. They're like,
yes,
what?
yes,
Right? And I
yeah,
think that's terrific. I
hmm
think that's terrific. But you and I here, what we are in this sort of in between stage, right? When
Yeah.
we were raised a certain way, and now all of that is shifting, but it hasn't yet shifted. So
Hmm.
we're here for the great breaking down, I think.
Yes,
May not be here for
absolutely.
whatever comes in the end,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that we don't, work towards whatever is coming in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're all, we all incarnated and said this is going to be great fun.
Yes.
We're here to build something new. We're going to change the way we're doing everything. But that's what has to happen because most of the systems are, not working that well anymore. They were put in place many years ago, and the world and our society has changed so much. And now the time has come when we really do have to take a hard look at all the different things we have put in place and start making changes to make things work better.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to be political, because I can't help it, the president uh, said at one point, I think he wanted it to become a motto for the country. So he said, America will be woke no more. Like, wait, what? And what I
Yeah.
see, it just in my real life, but also across the spectrum and in
Hmm.
social media and among my clients, is this sort of sleeping bear waking,
Hmm. Hmm.
people asking themselves, wait a minute, why are things this way?
Hmm.
Why are women told, be
Yeah.
sweet, be nice? Oh, we
Hmm.
don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion because it's not polite. Well, is politeness I mean, is that the apex
Yeah.
of our intention? Like,
Well, that's the patriarchal society we have built, right, for the last like
yes,
2,000 years.
yes,
Because we used to worship goddesses. And,
yes,
then we got the Bible. I don't know who rewrote that, but now then it
yes.
becomes the patriarchy. And the women were pushed down because the women, I'm going to say the men were probably afraid of our power.
I think that you don't even have to hesitate to say
Mhm.
that is absolutely true. Well, historically, I would think that you and I would be identified as witches.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. In the
I
olden
think,
days.
yes, and I
Yeah.
think that every woman, if she acknowledged her power and her
Yes.
sovereignty, is a witch.
Yeah.
Because I don't think being a witch is a bad thing.
No, being a witch is like being a healer,
Exactly.
tuning into your intuition and things that we all have, right? It's just the way, the word witch doesn't sound so nice in
Doesn't
today's
sound so
society,
nice.
but it's, they were healers.
They
They
were,
were
that's
people
right.
that could tune into healing abilities and intuition and help people.
And so we have this really interesting dichotomy happening right now where you have a lot of of us women
Hmm.
who are healers moving to the fore, but then you also have this Christian right thing also.
Hmm.
And when things are difficult, people do turn to people like us. That's
Yeah.
the thing. And when things are calm
Hmm.
and regulated, we get turned against.
Hmm.
So that tide, I think we're still on the rise, but
Hmm.
historically speaking, we tend to see that is the cycle that happens, and
Hmm.
I think we need to be prepared for that. I know a lot of
Hmm.
people um, who I would call witches, but again, I say every woman. We give life. I
Hmm.
mean, from our bodies, we give life,
Yeah.
and then we feed. I mean, if that's not being, that's
Hmm.
not magic. I don't know what is. But I think we need to be
Yeah.
prepared for what comes should there be a backlash. I know a lot of people who have gone underground as a result of
Hmm.
that. I guess that's a choice that one can make. My
Hmm.
theory is, um, if this is what I came here to do, why would I not do it? And if my life is forfeit
Hmm.
at some point because of that, well, oh, it was a good life, and okay, let's see what's next after this life. Do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
this encouragement to don't let people know what you do, and
Mhm.
I just think it's wrong-headed. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think so too. I think we're moving forward though in terms of, intuition and medical intuition. I'm a member of the National Organization of Medical Intuition, or NOMI, and they're establishing, they're doing research on people, nurses and doctors and regular people. So where is that intuition coming from? We've had this for thousands of years, but then we decided that, no, we should not do that. The whole science approach to things, which is how medical school is, right? We have to prove everything is part of research. And then if they have this diagnosis or this symptom, you give them this medication, and and you have to practice it the way that is, which makes it harder. But when you tune into a lot of physicians, and I know a lot of doctors that are extremely intuitive, they're obviously, if I'm working as a physician, I'm going to work under my license.
Right.
Now, does
Right.
that mean I'm not going to listen to the spirit world? No, of course not. If the spirit world says this person has lung cancer, I'm going to say, hey, let's do an X-ray and see if anything shows up. You've had this cough for a while, right? I'm going to go there. I'm going to present it that way. I'm not going to tune that out and say, oh no, the spirit world's wrong. So in the end, the patient is still going to benefit. I'm not going to do anything that's out of the scope of practice. The only thing that could happen is that I'm now going to order an extra lab test. I'm not going to suggest something else. And what happens is that sure enough, that intuition or that message that you received is absolutely correct. I'm going to say a lot of physicians have that. They don't talk about it. They don't want to be known as working that way because again, they're going to be looked at as a quack. I know people who have worked in the emergency room who've had shared near-death experiences with the people coming in. So these are things that I'm going to say a lot of physicians and nurses are experiencing, but it's not wildly known yet.
That's
So we're hoping, with this organization,
yeah.
bringing light to this. And this is, we are intuitive creatures and we
Yes.
have to bring this forward. The world is changing. We have to use all our faculties to help, make somebody better or help heal people.
I agree. I
Mhm.
agree. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about? Probably tons that we haven't talked about.
Right. We could talk for hours.
Would you like to share?
Anything we haven't talked about? Yeah, we're going to say ancestral healing is a big one. So, how we
So that's okay.
patterns
That's very
repeat.
cool. Ancestral healing. So is that the theory that that epigenetically
Hmm.
we are connected to our ancestors and to the people who come after us, and
Hmm.
that healing can be done forwards and also backwards, correct?
Yes. Hmm.
Because I was thinking
Yes.
about that.
So we know that, for example, trauma is inherited on the DNA. So they have already done research. They've already identified genes. I know that the FKBP5 gene was one of the first ones. And so they did studies on survivors from the Holocaust, and they can see that the genes get passed down all the way to the grandchildren, because I guess now they have to have kids, right, to make it go
Right.
one more generation. But they can see that, and they've identified more genes, and we can see that trauma changes the expression of the DNA via epigenetics. So not only do we inherit trauma on the DNA, now think about it, because the egg that you came from, your mom made that egg when she was a 20-week-old fetus in your grandmother's womb. So
Mhm.
what was going on in your grandmother's womb when she was pregnant with your mom that changed her epigenetics and coding and for the egg that you came from, right? See how things get passed down? And there's studies that show, they've done mice studies that show that it gets passed down, even if they just take the sperm from a male mice and then artificially inseminate the female mice, they can see the shifts happening in that offspring. So we know that ancestral issues and trauma, unresolved trauma issue, get passed down on the DNA. It's also our lived experiences. So how were you raised? What, how was your relationship to your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles? And it goes out because you can inherit trauma and things from anybody in your ancestral lineage or even further beyond that. And I'm going to say this is where the quantum physics comes in, or the quantum mechanics, where the people who received the Nobel Prize in physics probably 2 or 3 years ago now, and there were three physicists that received the Nobel Prize, and they proved that the entanglement of the atoms. So if you have, just think if you have, I have two apples in my room right here, and you have two apples in your room. And we're really good at throwing these apples. So we both throw our apples and they both land right next to each other in a park in Los Angeles. So you have one of your apples is now meeting one of my apples in this park in Los Angeles. Well, they're now entangled because they just met.
Right.
But what happened to the apples that were left behind? So you still have an apple in your room, and I still have an apple in my room. Guess what? They're now entangled. So my apple in this room and your apple in your room are now entangled because
Because
one
of the
of our
ones
apples
working together.
met.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so they're connected back to the apples in our room. And so now we're entangled. So if I ate my apple, your apple in your room is going to say something about that because they're now, my apple and your apple are now entangled. And this is what they got the Nobel Prize for. But when you think of this ancestrally, right, think about how interconnected we all are. So not only where we came from, DNA and epigenetics, but also the quantum mechanics of it all and quantum physics. But then also we have our own lived experiences. How were you treated as a child? Your mom didn't like you. You had problems with your mom. Well, we already know then you have a mother wound. And then how does that show up in your life? And many times people, even if you had the best mom in the world, I'm going to say you still have a mother wound. It's just
Right.
more hidden, right? When we know we didn't have a good relationship with our mom, the writing is on the wall. But when we had a really good relationship, we might not see it as easily. I'm going to say a lot of those people will say, well, I have a problem with my partner, and my partner doesn't see me, doesn't hear me, and I feel like I'm doing all the chores in the house. I can't make him help me with the dishes and the laundry and the kids and everything else. Well, let's go back and take a look at where you came from. What was your
That's your
relationship with your
mother's
mom?
experience.
Right?
Yeah, right.
So, and then you can see the patterns, coming back. So I work a lot with ancestral healing and helping people resolve. It doesn't matter what the issue is. It could be I get passed up for the promotion at work. I have problems finding the right person, being in the right relationship. I haven't spoken to my son for the last 3 years, and I don't know what happened there, right? So these are all common issues that people face I'm going to say a lot of people. I'm going to say these are probably the most common issues. Breakdown in communication within the family, not feeling seen and heard in relationships, and or it's the same thing at work. But once you start looking at things ancestrally, you can see the patterns, you can see where it came from, and then once you see it, once you create that awareness of why it is you're having the problem in the first place, well, then you can also solve it. So I liken it to remember when you learned division
Mhm.
and the first couple of times it might not have made sense and you had to do this whole thing and putting certain numbers in this spot and putting the other number over here and trying to make sense out of how this works. And then one day it all clicked and you said, oh, now I know how to do it. This is easy, right? And all of a sudden that child knows exactly how to do it and just whips through the math homework. It's the same thing when you are resolving your own issues. Once you can see why you're struggling with an issue, well, now you can also resolve it.
Yeah.
So I work a lot with ancestral healing as well.
That makes sense. And so that's like on an individual basis, which I think is very cool. It was making me think of a more also a collective thing. Like, for example, to be political, why is it that 92% of Black women, we didn't get a memo, I didn't get an email, 92% of women knew which way to go, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And collectively, epigenetically, I would argue, agreed that after the election happened, that our collective response was going to be to mind our business and drink our tea, which is a different kind of response than
Yeah.
we would have had before, where we would have been
Hmm.
in the streets. But nobody sent anybody an email about this.
Hmm.
We just knew.
Yes.
That's epigenetic.
Hmm.
Has to be. By
Hmm.
the same token, there were other people who voted other ways for other reasons
Hmm.
that were also epigenetic.
Hmm.
And so it is individual, but also collectively as a
Yeah.
group. When we
Hmm.
start exploring these things, and it's what you say, when you understand the why of
Hmm.
something, Well, then you understand it and you can
Yeah.
decide, is it something that you want to stick with now that you know
Hmm.
the origins of it, or can you untangle the entanglement so that you can move forward in a different way? It's just so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and I'm going to say we are living in an entanglement,
Yes,
world right now because there's a lot of things that are getting untangled. We're saying this
yes,
doesn't work. We have to
yes,
untangle this. Why doesn't it work? Let's fix it. And that's the beauty of the chaos that we can see in the world right now is that, people are longing for a better world. People should not have to be hungry. People should not, it shouldn't be that you have to choose between food, a roof over your head, or medical care. I
yeah,
mean, is it like to me, that's a birthright. Everybody should have food.
right.
Everybody should have access to medical care. Everybody should have access to education. Uh, that is the only way we can make a better world. We have to make sure that everybody's taken care of. That's number one. However, we're going to do that, but it needs to happen. We need
Right.
to step up to the plate and help everybody out.
Exactly,
Mhm.
and not be um, lured being afraid of words like democratic socialism, which Mamdani is a democratic
Yes.
socialist, and he admits that he is. I mean, let's look at what democratic
Mhm.
socialism really is. You talked about what it was like in Sweden, where
Yes.
where people are provided for. What's the problem with that? Like,
Yeah,
what
well,
is
what you what you think here is a democratic socialist is really the right wing in Sweden. So, people have a long way to go. People don't
it?
understand, I think, what socialism is or what they're talking about,
That's right.
because they have just heard that word,
That's right.
and they're afraid of it. Oh no, it's like Russia, right? But the socialistic or democratic movement in the United States is far from socialism. It is literally the right wing in those countries.
Mhm.
So, and we have to take what's, the good things. And I'm not going to say, there are things I'm sure the Republicans are doing that are great. And there are things that the Democrats are doing that are great, things that the independents believe are great. But let's have a communication. Let's put our heads together and make a better world for everyone. It shouldn't be when you have the division of the rich and the poor, right? You have to make sure that everybody has food, everybody has access to better their work, to better their life, and that everybody should be able to, save up for a house. Now, when I look at my own kids, it's almost an impossibility. My kids are in their 30s.
Right,
How in the world are they supposed to save up for a house?
right,
That dream is basically gone.
right.
And we have to change because we have literally destroyed the American dream, and we need to change so that
Well, and
things become attainable.
The American dream, by the way, was was only ever meant for certain people.
Hmm.
We all
Yes.
pledged allegiance to it, and
Hmm.
all of that, but it was never meant for
Yeah.
everyone. And I love the
Hmm.
analogy. As somebody who is math challenged, just like I am tech challenged, I can remember feeling my hands sweat and tears in my eyes trying to work out a mathematical
Hmm.
problem. But what you're saying is take an equation.
Hmm.
So the beauty of math, right, is that there is a right answer,
Hmm.
right? And so at the end of that rainbow is that right answer. But
Hmm.
what we've got now is all of the numbers and all of the letters jumbled up, just
Yeah.
jumbled up. And we now we're in the jumbling up process, right?
Hmm.
We have to now methodically, logically, and compassionately
Hmm.
work the equation step by
Hmm.
step using order of operations
Yeah.
as we're creating order out of chaos. But first,
Hmm.
chaos. First,
Yes. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we have to have the chaos in order to be pushed to make changes. If everything was, it's like if you sit on the beach in Hawaii and drink pina coladas every day, nothing's going to happen. And
right,
sometimes we have to experience a little bit of a crisis in order to get pushed in a new direction. Just like, somebody gets fired from their job or get laid off, and all of a sudden, well, now I don't have that job anymore. So now I'm forced to go in a new direction, right? And sometimes that happens because I'm going to say the change didn't happen soon enough. And so the spirit world's going to say, all right, I'm just going to close the door for you, make you go in this direction now, right? Because like we talked about before, I don't think that there are coincidences. I think there is some divine plan that's operating in the background, even though we don't really have access to it, but it's definitely there. And a lot of things are can be seen in your astrological chart. I've been told,
Yep.
having readings with good astrologers saying, "Oh yeah, I can see your near-death experience happened, July 10th, 1992," and I'm, saying, what do you mean? You can see it? And they say,
Yep.
yep, I can see it. That's, all the planets lined up in this very specific way. And it has to do with the way the planets were lined up when the day you were born. And literally that first one was to activate your life path because you had to have that experience in order to go on this path, in order to fulfill your path,
I
your life
agree.
journey.
Yes,
And it's
I
literally in your chart.
in
So
your
is this
chart.
just a movie script then that we're living out?
Kind of. I mean, I've had many, many astrologers on my program, many Sunday guests, because I'm not an astrologer myself, but I think astrology is, it is. It's a roadmap of your life. And one of the things that I've been thrilled by is when people explain to me the placements and that they'll invariably say, you are exactly on the path that you
Yes.
came here
Yeah.
intended to be on. And I'm like, well, good,
Yep.
And if I ever
Yeah.
move off, somebody slap me. But of course, the universe will slap
Yeah.
you. But you came here with a certain
Hmm.
soul mission, certain lessons that you
Hmm.
decided, I think I'd like to take these lessons on.
Hmm.
You don't have to do that once you get here. You could say, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was in
Yeah.
spirit. I didn't really, I forgot
Yes.
what it was to him. You can do that. Or
Yeah.
you can take advantage
Hmm.
of looking at astrology, seeing where, for example, your north node and your south node are. Where are you coming from? Where
Hmm.
are you going to? And how has your life, led you
Yeah.
in that direction? Or are
Hmm.
you staying stuck because it's safe, it's what you
Yeah.
know, all of that? Yeah, I think astrology is a
Hmm.
great psychological tool
Hmm.
that people
Yeah,
should.
no, I mean, it's amazing because it's to me now it's just funny
Yeah.
because I didn't know anything about it during all these years. And it's something I didn't learn until I was in my late 50s,
Mhm.
right? And now I can see, numerology, astrology, how everything was there. And it was after I graduated from med school. And this other physician said, she looks at me and she goes, and she's this very spiritual doctor, but I'm not sure how much her patients actually know about that. She looks at me and she says, I bet you're an 11 in numerology. And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. What's numerology? Right? I had no idea. And then she showed me how to do it. And sure enough, I was an 11. So then that means
It's a
that
master number.
I'm a master life path number 11. I came here as a healer,
Yeah.
right? So now all of a sudden, I was like, wow, that makes sense now. And then, I do the astrology reading and they say, oh, yeah, and you were sick for many years and then you got well around, let's say, like around 44. And I'm like, yeah. And you can see that in your chart. You go, yeah, that's when you paid off your last past life karma, and that's when you had to live through that. It's also an initiation to become the healer. You have to be sick yourself, right? And then I go to Arthur Findlay College, and I have a reading with one of my teachers. And this was before I even knew about the numerology. It was one of the first times I was there, and the teacher says, "Oh, you're incarnated. You're here as a healer, and your aura is of healing energy." And it says all you have to do is appear because you have healing energy in your aura. And I looked at my teacher and I said, "No, that can't be. What do you mean I have healing energy in my aura?" Had literally just graduated from med school. So I was in that very scientific mode. And then, of course, like a year goes by and I learn about numerology and astrology. And then all of a sudden, now I understood. But he could tell because he communicated with the spirit world. And the spirit world said, she needs to know this, right?
Well,
But
think
it's
about
really interesting because all the pieces fall into place.
well, think
Hmm.
about the fact that there was a time in your life and in my life where you would hear things like astrology, tarot, numerology, and think that it was weird.
Wacky. Yes.
The
Yeah.
hippies are doing that, and
Yeah.
they're smoking.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I mean, I kind of thought like that until I had experiences
Hmm.
that showed me otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that when you have what's cool about what I think you and I do is that we have um, legitimate worldly bona fides, let's just say.
Hmm.
Like we have each done very conventional things that people
Yeah.
understand as being impressive and whatever.
Hmm.
So when people like us
Hmm.
talk about things like this,
Yes.
I think that people who listen say,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, but you know what? They're not kooks. They're not
Yeah.
weirdos. They're legit. They're seen as
Hmm.
legit in other arenae. Maybe they know what they're talking about here."
Hmm.
And I think that's beautiful because then it gives them buy-in to say, well,
Hmm.
let me learn more. Let me see.
Yes.
Because I think as human beings,
Hmm.
a yearning for this to
Hmm.
be true. The fact
Yeah.
that the metaphysical and the physical are not two sides of the
Hmm.
same coin, the same thing.
Hmm. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think part of our incarnation is also to bring credibility to
Yes,
mediumship, to card reading, and all
yes,
these different things that are a little,
exactly.
that if you're very scientific, you might think is a little wacky, right? But it helps bring credibility to that. I was a programmer for IBM and a systems analyst in
I
my
mean,
youth.
you can't get more
Right. I
scientific.
was systems analyst and a programmer. I mean, right? It's all tech. And then I was home with my kids for a number of years. And then I did everything. I sold Tupperware, Shackley, started my own web business, kids' quality toys. And then my kids were teenagers. And, I knew I had to move on. And then I went back and I was a sales rep in the biotech industry. And then I became the sales manager, national sales manager for this company. So what am I doing all day? I'm doing spreadsheets. Are we hitting the numbers? Who needs help? Meetings, and it's so different. And then I went to medical school, and then I activated the whole spiritual component. And then, but what I'm doing today is really a blend of all of that, right? And
All of that.
it
That's
helps me relate to people. I've been that sales rep. I've been the person at home. I've been the homemaker selling, Tupperware. I
right.
mean, when you think of the path and the steps that I've taken in my life to get to where I am, but it all makes sense now because I have the ability to relate to all the people that are doing these jobs because I've done them myself.
Exactly. So,
I forgot insurance. I also sold insurance for a short period of time. I
which
got an
is to
insurance
say,
license.
which is to say
Yeah.
to the audience that, wherever you are as you listen to
Hmm.
this, um, that trajectory is also open to you. Nothing that you're doing in this moment is 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 unrelated to the path that you walk and where you find yourself at any given point.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great that you and I are out there doing this good work, and I hope it encourages people to explore their own relationship
Hmm.
um, to spirit, to their own intuition,
Hmm.
to their own thought processes, and to sort of allow themselves to be pulled towards the things that attract them in this world. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, whatever medium you want to use is good,
Yeah. Whatever speaks to you.
whatever speaks to you.
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you came on, Dr. Lottie.
Yeah, it's been great fun. It's
We'll do
always a
it
pleasure
again.
to see you.
We'll do it again. And I had said to her when I first met her, that I really felt like I knew her from another time. And I do still
Mhm.
feel that way, that we've known each other,
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
been related or worked together, but
Yeah.
and when you feel that, again, there are no coincidences. So when you
Mhm.
feel that about somebody, it's good to act on that and
Yeah.
make that connection. And I'm glad that we
Mhm.
have.
Yes. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And I love, that when we met, we both had that feeling. It's
Yeah,
like, why do I feel like I know you? Have I worked with you before? Have I met you somewhere? Right? But it's that intuitive feeling. And it's so interesting because I think many times, people might not act on it or even mention it, but it's so worth mentioning because maybe the other person is feeling the same thing. There's
exactly.
something there, like you have some old memories. There's something, the soul knows that other
Oh
soul.
no, that's
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much for coming. And you all, thank you so much for being with me and keeping us company on this Sunday and letting me introduce my friend, Dr. Lottie, to you. I'll have her information in the show notes. And listen, as I said, I have consulted her in her professional capacity and found it really useful. And I know others who have felt the same. So, you know, you might want to check her out. All right, you all. I'll see you soon. Take care.